In the 19th century, philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer made a profound observation about the human condition. He believed that our lives are not marked by an incessant quest for happiness, but by a constant attempt to reduce suffering. For him, existence is akin to a vast prison, where each of us is confined, not by choice, but by the simple reality of being alive. Imagine life as a penitentiary. Just as no one chooses to be in prison, no one chooses to be born. We cannot escape until our sentence ends, and we are limited by the walls of the present moment. Within these confines, we face an endless stream of suffering, tragedy, and worry. We desperately move from one pleasure to another, only to experience temporary relief from pain. Schopenhauer called this driving force the will to live. It is this will that compels us to struggle for survival, often at the expense of others. Like gangs of prisoners, the species of the world are in a continual war for dominance. The order of nature seems to be eat or be eaten. When we observe nature, we see plants and animals serving as food for each other, while humans, at the top of this chain, exploit their own kind and destroy the natural habitat. And yet, we too are victims of diseases, disasters, and our own destructiveness. Schopenhauer's view is bleak, comparing the world to a penal colony, devoid of any divine grace. But if life is truly a prison of suffering, why do we continue to fight? What keeps us moving towards a happiness that always seems to elude us? And more importantly, is there a way to transcend this pessimistic view and find some meaning or relief? These are the questions I would like to explore, seeking to understand the human condition through the lens of one of history's most pessimistic philosophers. And perhaps find an answer that offers a light at the end of this dark tunnel. Following the metaphor of life as a prison, the inevitable question arises: why do we continue to struggle? If existence is marked by pain and frustration, what drives us forward? The answer may lie in the pursuit of something that constantly seems to elude our grasp. This will is not just a necessity for physical preservation. It is an instinctive force that motivates us to seek pleasures and avoid pains. Even knowing that these pleasures are fleeting, we continue to chase them, trying to fill the void we feel. This is reflected in our daily lives, where we constantly seek new experiences, whether in travel, hobbies, or the ceaseless pursuit of social recognition. This pursuit is not merely physical, but also spiritual and emotional. We work towards goals, hoping to find a deeper meaning. However, even after achieving our objectives, we often feel that something is still missing. Schopenhauer described this experience as a kind of existential fatigue, where fulfillment is always temporary and never completely satisfying. This struggle also manifests in our interpersonal relationships. We seek connections, love, and friendship, hoping that these bonds will bring us lasting happiness. But these relationships are complicated by unmet expectations and emotional challenges, often leading us back to feelings of dissatisfaction. The complexity of human interactions leaves us anxious and frustrated, perpetuating the cycle of seeking relief. This constant dissatisfaction leads to the central question: what truly drives us on this endless journey? This force that moves us, which Schopenhauer called the will to live, is not just a quest for pleasure but a manifestation of something deeper and often irrational. At the heart of Schopenhauer's philosophy is the idea that the will to live is a primal and irrational force that permeates all aspects of existence. It is not just the impulse to survive, but also the engine of all our desires and actions. This will is an insatiable and uncontrollable force, causing us to constantly desire things we think will bring us happiness or satisfaction. Whether it's a desire for wealth, power, love, or recognition, this will drives us to ceaselessly seek something more, something beyond what we already have. A clear example of this irrationality can be seen in the relentless pursuit of material goods. Often, we believe that owning a new car, a bigger house, or designer clothes will bring us lasting happiness. However, after acquiring these items, the satisfaction is ephemeral, and soon a new desire arises. This cycle of desire and dissatisfaction is a direct manifestation of the will to live. Moreover, this will is not purely individual. It manifests in collective behaviors and societal norms. The relentless pursuit of more, both by individuals and societies, creates a dynamic where cooperation is often replaced by competition. This constant struggle for resources, status, and power is an expression of the same will, which moves us both on personal and societal levels. The insatiable nature of the will leads to suffering. Even when we achieve our goals, the satisfaction is only temporary. Soon, new desires emerge, and the cycle begins anew. This constant dissatisfaction is a central characteristic of the human condition, according to Schopenhauer, and is what keeps us moving, always seeking something that seems to be just out of reach. This incessant desire leads us into conflict with others, whether in small daily disagreements or in large-scale social and political conflicts. The will to live not only drives us to seek more, but also to compete and, often, to conflict with others, leading us to the next reflection. The will to live, being insatiable and competitive, not only motivates our individual efforts, but also profoundly influences our societies. In a world where resources are limited, this will translate into a constant struggle for survival and power. In various aspects of life, from work environments to political arenas, competition becomes inevitable. At the most basic level, competition is a struggle for survival. In an environment where what we desire is often scarce, rivalry naturally arises, whether in nature, where predators hunt their prey, or in human society, where individuals and groups compete for wealth, power, and status. This pursuit can become fierce and relentless. An example of this is the race for promotions and recognition at work, where cooperation is often sacrificed in the name of personal progress. Beyond the competition for survival, the will to live also leads us to exploit and often to destroy. We seek to maximize our happiness and minimize our suffering, often at the expense of others and the environment. The exploitation of natural resources, the exploitation of other human beings, and the insatiable quest for profit are examples of how this will can manifest harmfully. These actions often result in pain and suffering, both for those who win and for those who lose. Even those who manage to achieve their objectives face persistent dissatisfaction, as the nature of the will is insatiable. Schopenhauer suggested that, deep down, this dissatisfaction is inevitable, as the will is a force that can never be completely satisfied. Competition and conflict are not just individual issues, but also social and structural. Wars, political disputes, and economic inequalities are all expressions of the same dynamic. The will, by always seeking more, not only leads to conflicts between individuals, but also between nations and cultures. However, understanding these dynamics can help us reflect on the real causes of our problems and seek ways to minimize the suffering they cause. Thus, the question arises, if the world is filled with conflicts and competitions, is there a way to deal with these realities more consciously and compassionately? This questioning leads us to Schopenhauer's broader and more pessimistic view of human existence. Schopenhauer is often considered one of the most pessimistic philosophers in history. He viewed life as essentially painful and believed that suffering is an inevitable part of existence. This view, although grim, is not a sentence of despair. For Schopenhauer, recognizing the reality of suffering can lead us to a deeper understanding of the human condition, and eventually, to a form of relief. Schopenhauer's pessimism is not merely a negative or defeatist view of life. He argues that by accepting the inevitability of suffering, we can begin to seek more genuine ways to find relief and perhaps a deeper meaning. This perspective invites us to abandon the illusion that constant happiness is achievable, and instead to adopt a more realistic and compassionate view of life. Accepting universal suffering can be a first step toward developing genuine empathy for others. Schopenhauer believed that by recognizing that all human beings share a common experience of pain, we can develop authentic compassion. This empathy not only connects us to others, but can also soften our own suffering by realizing that we are not alone in our struggles. An example of this compassion can be seen in the practice of altruistic actions. When we help others, we are not only alleviating their suffering, but also experiencing a reduction in our own discomfort. This act of reaching out to someone in need can be a way to find meaning amid pain. This acceptance of pessimism and the practice of compassion can, paradoxically, guide us to a form of contentment. It's not about denying the grim reality of life, but about finding a way to live that is not based on illusions. Schopenhauer challenges us to face life as it is, with all its difficulties, and to seek a form of peace that is realistic and grounded. Thus, the question remains, how can we cultivate this compassion and find a path beyond suffering? Compassion is not just a feeling, but an active and ongoing practice, which can transform our perception of life and human relationships. We come to the last aspect of Schopenhauer's vision we will explore: compassion as a possible way out of the endless cycle of suffering. While his philosophy is often marked by pessimism, he also offers a hope for relief through compassion and empathy. Compassion, according to Schopenhauer, is the ability to feel the suffering of others as if it were our own. This ability to identify with the pain of others can help us transcend our natural selfishness, which is driven by the will to live. When we genuinely care about the well-being of others, we can begin to minimize the negative impact of our own insatiable desires. Practicing compassion can take various forms, from small acts of kindness to larger actions of social change. A practical example is volunteering, where we dedicate our time to help those in need, such as in community kitchens or shelters. These acts of compassion not only benefit the recipients, but also provide those who help with a sense of purpose and connection. Moreover, compassion can create a sense of community and connection that is often lacking in our modern lives. By recognizing that everyone shares a common experience of pain and struggle, we can feel less isolated and more integrated into a larger community of human beings. This feeling of belonging is fundamental to a satisfying life and can alleviate the feeling of emptiness that often accompanies us. Adopting a practice of life based on compassion can transform our perception of the world and ourselves. Instead of focusing solely on our own pains and frustrations, we begin to see the bigger picture and understand that everyone faces challenges. This shift in perspective can be liberating, offering a way to live that is less self-centered and more open to the collective experience. Thus, compassion can be seen as a key to freedom, not in the sense of escaping suffering, but of finding a more authentic and connected way to live. This practice does not promise to eliminate all pains, but offers a way to face them with more wisdom and courage. Schopenhauer leaves us with the reflection that perhaps, through compassion, we can find a way to live that, although not free from challenges, is full of meaning and purpose. Although Schopenhauer sees life as a prison of suffering, I believe that this view limits the potential to experience life in all its richness. Instead of focusing on pain and dissatisfaction, we can choose to see each moment as an opportunity for growth and discovery. Life is not an inevitable sequence of disillusionments, but a journey full of possibilities. We can find meaning and pleasure in our daily actions, in the relationships we cultivate, and in constant learning. In my opinion, the true pleasure in life does not come from avoiding suffering at all costs, but from embracing the human experience in all its nuances. By living with integrity, compassion, and curiosity, we can transcend the view of being prisoners and become protagonists of our own stories.